Hello, Greeks and barbarians. Welcome to Western Music Zero, Week 3, Scales, Keys, and Intervals. We already did cover a little bit of scales and keys, but let's just go over it again really quick, just in case you need a bit of a refresher. I like to kind of have these lessons overlap each other a little bit. So let's take a look at scale degrees first, just to do a quick review. So here's what a scale looks like. Every note gets its own line and space, and then it repeats itself. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's a C major scale. And the first and last note are always called the tonic of a scale. These are not necessarily things that you need to know, but they're not bad to know either. The fifth note is a dominant, the fourth note is a subdominant. And you'll notice that between the tonic and the dominant, the subtonic, and the subdominant and the tonic, there are 4 notes in between. This is called a generic fifth. Subdominant just means it's below. Mediant is the note that's in between, and submediant is the note in between the subdominant and the tonic. Supertonic, and then this last note, you would think it would be called the subtonic, but it's actually called the leading tone. And that's because in Western music, when you have a dominant chord, the third of the dominant chord usually leads right up to the tonic. That's why it's called the leading tone. It comes from a thing called voice leading, which you'll learn about as you sing through well-written music for 4 voices. So if you want to hear how that sounds, so you have tonic, supertonic, median, subdominant, dominant, submedian, leading tone, because it leads back to the octave, tonic, 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 leading tone, tonic. Make sense? In natural minor, the third is flat, and the sixth is flat, and the seventh is flat. And because it's not a half step between the leading tone and the tonic, that now does become the subtonic. And it changes to the leading tone when you make it natural. This is something that you have to do in the minor key to create what's called functional harmony. So here's how that scale sounds. Supertonic, median, subdominant, dominant. Oops, sorry, start again. Supertonic, median, subdominant, dominant, submedian, subtonic, tonic. But you can also go leading tone, tonic, subtonic, tonic. This mouse-controlled piano is not the greatest thing in the world. So, you can also show what a scale degree is by writing the number of it with a little caret above it. That's what that little symbol is called, I think. Yeah, caret. So, G in the key of C major is the fifth note, also known as the dominant. So we can label it as a 5 with a caret on top. So that's how scale degrees work. Now, here's the key signatures thing again that we were talking about. Just to go over it really quickly. When you write out a scale and you need to use accidentals, and you want those accidentals to be there all the time, you move them to the left of the staff. And now it's just assumed that every time you play an A, there'll be an A flat. Every time you play a B, there'll be a B flat. And every time you play an E flat, an E, it'll be an E flat. So in this case, where it's D flat major, which has a lot of flats, playing it for you right here, D flat, D flat, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, D flat. You notice that all of the black keys are being used. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what you can do is you can take them all off of the scale, writing it every time, and put them right here, 5 flats. As we talked about before, they're written in a special order. You don't really need to know this until you start actually writing your own arrangements. But most of the time, this will be done for you in manuscript software. 3 sharps, arranged like that. That's A major, E major, 4 sharps, and they also have their own specific order. Now, here's something interesting about, I'm going to stress this again because I brought this up on the last lesson and I didn't really make it seem as important as it is. It's really easy to figure out what key you're in, and when you can figure out what key you're in, you can figure out what line or space is your do, as it were. This is how you do it. If it's a flat key, the second to last flat is your tonic, is your do. So in the case of, let's say it's 3 flats, B flat, E flat, A flat, that E flat is your do. So if you see a note here on the bottom line or on the top space, those are both E's, that's do. But it would be in E flat. Do, so do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. If it's 5 flats, then this 4th flat is your tonic, which is D flat. So whenever you see a note being played on D, it's D flat, and that's your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You don't see this that often with our Byzantine scores, and even with a lot of our Western scores, because we tend to write with the least amount of accidentals as possible, unless it's a specific chromatic mode or something like that. So you won't see this that often. It's just good to know. Now, I want to cover here's a quick little unit on how to calculate your key signatures. Now, there's a lot of key signatures that you can write out. There's 15 major scales and 15 minor scales. And if you're going to a music school, you should actually have these all memorized. But there's an easy way to figure it out. So, let's say that each key signature is assigned a numeric value. So, and it's determined by how many flats or sharps it has. If it's 1 sharp, it's +1. If it's 1 flat, it's -1. So, key of C major has 0. The key of D major has 2 sharps. It's 2. E major has 4 sharps. It's 4. F has 1 flat, which is -1. G has 1 sharp, which is 1. A has 3 sharps, so we can call it 3. And B has 5 sharps, we can call it 5. So, if you want to use this method, you can memorize these, and then from here on out, this becomes a lot easier to build scales and build key signatures, if you really want to do this. I'm not going to make this is not so important in just being able to survive our basic Sunday in a choir. But if you ever do want to do it, all you basically have to do is you subtract or add 7, and you can get the next chromatic note as the major scale, or as the scale. So if you minus 7 from C, you get C flat. If you add 7, you get C sharp. So let's figure out E flat major. So you have E major, which is 4 sharps, and you subtract 7, which will give you E flat major, but 4 minus 7 is minus what? 3. That's how you get that. F is 1 flat, which is -1, and we want to go up to F sharp major. So we add 7. So -1 plus 7 equals 6. So it's 6 sharps. Now minor scales, if you want the parallel minor, you just -3 sharps or flats. So C major to C minor is -3, 0 minus 3. D major to D minor is 2 minus 3, -1, D minor. F major, which is -1, to F minor is it's -1 minus 3 equals -4, 4 flats. It's F minor. So if you want to do C sharp minor from C major, you would add 7. There's your C sharp major, but then you -3. You get 4 sharps. So let's say we want to do something weird like G sharp major. G major has 1 sharp. You add 7 to get G sharp majors. So you have 8. And what happens is you can only have 7 sharps because there's only A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There's only 7 notes in Western music. So what you do is you loop back and add another sharp to the first note. So you have 1 sharp, 2 sharp, 3 sharp, 4 sharp, 5 sharp, 6 sharp, 7 sharps, and then your 8th sharp is here. So then you get F double sharp. Now, as it says here, nobody's ever going to write G double sharp major. It doesn't make any sense. Make it A flat. Because if you remember, G sharp is the same as A flat as it sounds. And that's just a little handy chart to kind of show you all the different things that we've covered so far. Now, this is what I want to get into. Intervals. So, intervals, this is what we're going to be using most of the time when we're reading music. It's really a good idea, I feel like, especially if you want to be good at both Byzantine and Western music, to get good at reading by interval. Instead of reading like, oh, that's a C, that's an E flat, that's an F sharp, that's a whatever, and trying to figure it out and visualizing the piano and singing what you think it might sound like, I think it's a lot better to read by interval, which is exactly what you're doing, by the way, with Byzantine music. So this is a unison, also known as a first. C to C, D to D, E to E. But you also have an augmented first, or a a first that goes up or a first that goes down. These are also still called firsts. Moving right along. Now these are all seconds. Even though this is a whole step, this is a whole step, and this is a half step from E to F, these are all considered still seconds. So this is kind of like the opposite of what happens in Byzantine music, where these are considered ones, right? This is an oligon or a petasti, just go up one note. We call them, in Western music, we call them seconds. When you go up 2 notes, it's called a third. You'll notice that it's going from a line to a line, a line to a line, a space to a space, a space to a space, or a line to a line. And we can kind of sync through these. So, bring my piano over here. So, C, D, that's a second, da, da, do, re. Here's a third. Do, mi, ni, vo, that's a third. But so is ba, ga, D, F, That's also a third, but it's a minor third. Da 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 da. 1, 3, 2, 4. Whenever you go up by 2 notes, it's called a third. And then you have C, F, Ni, Ga, or you have D, G, Ba, Di, da 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 da. That's a fourth, also known as going up 3 in Byzantine music. Now you have a fifth. Na 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 na. Ni, Di, Si, G, D, A, Ba, Ga, D, A. That's a fifth. D, A, D, A. You probably are very familiar with how a fifth sounds. That's how fifths sound. They have a very kind of stately sort of quality to them. Now here are some intervals that are a little bit harder to sing. C, A. That's going up 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. C, D, E, F, G, A, also known in Western music as a sixth. C, A, C, A, C, A. Here's how they sound together. C, A. It's a little bit dissonant, but you do hear this a lot. And then you have a seventh. C, B, Do, C. Almost going up an entire octave. Then you have C, C, Do, Do. And that's an octave, going up by 8 notes. So this is how this all looks. I'm going to hold a C, and I'll just sing you each interval. C, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. So first, 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 second, first, first, third, first, fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth octave. And that's your basic diatonic intervals. Now, there are qualities to each one of these intervals, as we noticed. There's major and minor thirds and all that kind of stuff, and you can hear how those actually sound. Now, this is how you measure a specific interval. C to D and C to D flat are both generic seconds. But C to D is larger than C to D flat. It goes from C, D, or C, D flat. So, they have names. A major second is 2 half steps. C, D. Another example would be E to F sharp. E, F sharp, right? E, F sharp. Because there's 2 half steps in between those two. A major third is made up of 4 half steps. Z, da, da, 3, 4, C, E, C. So that's a major third. And then E, G sharp, E, G sharp, E. That's also a major third. Perfect fourth is 5 half steps. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 perfect fourth. It's called a perfect fourth just because it falls into kind of the harmonic overtone series, and it's historically considered one of the perfect intervals. F to B flat is also F to B flat. That's a perfect fourth as well. Perfect fifth. Is made up of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Perfect fifth. Perfect fifth. Then B, for example, B to F sharp. B, F sharp, B is also a perfect fifth. Major sixth is made up of half 9 steps. In other words, all of these are measurable by half steps, and these do not change no matter where they're from. So C to A is a major sixth, but then you have E flat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is also a major sixth. So you have C to A, C, A, that's a major sixth, but then you also have E flat, C is also a major sixth. These are harder intervals to sing, but don't worry. We'll get you to, you'll be able to do them in no time. Major seventh is basically, you could actually look at it as going down a half step and up an octave. So D, so if you're going to go D, D, C sharp, D, C sharp, D, because that's 11 half steps up. There's 12 half steps to the octave. So that's a major seventh. C, B, C. But then D to C sharp is also one. D, C sharp, D. See that? And then a perfect octave is 12 steps. It's the same note, but higher. C, C, C. And these terms, major and perfect, they're talking about the quality. So all of those major intervals are the same as all the major intervals have those half steps in between them. They come from the major scale. That's why they're called that. So C, D, C, E, that's a major third. C, F, that's a perfect fourth. C, G, that's a perfect fifth. C, A, that's a major sixth. C, B, that's a major seven. C, C, that's an octave. If you want to make any of those major intervals, like major second, major third, major sixth, major seventh, you can make them minor simply by lowering them a half step or making the distance in between the two notes 1 half step less. So, remember how we said C, E, it's 4 half steps up? Well, C, E flat is a minor third, it's only 3. So major third, minor third. You know the difference? It's because it comes from the minor scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. See that? So for example, E to G, G is also a minor third. Remember how E, G sharp, that's a major third. Do, re, mi, but this is do, re, mi, minor third. And then you have augmented. So augmented is 1 half step larger than a regular interval. So an augmented fourth would be from C to F sharp. C, F sharp, C, F sharp. So remember, a perfect fourth is C, F, C, F. So that's going from C to F, but if we go C to F sharp, that's an augmented fourth. And this is also an augmented fourth, F to B. F, B, F, B. Instead of F to B flat, da, da, da. F, B, F. And you can also have augmented over the majors. So an augmented third, remember a third is this, C, E, C. If we go C, F, C, that can be considered an augmented third. It sounds like a perfect fourth, but it can also be written that way. This is where we're getting into some of the intervals that don't really need to be discussed because they're a little bit a little bit more rare in occurrence. So I'm just going to skip through this and just show you the sum up here. So remember that your seconds, your thirds, your sixths, and sevenths, they can be major if they come from basically the degrees of the major scale. So a major third, do, mi, da, da, da. A minor third, do, re, mi, da, 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 major, da, 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 minor. And then you can also even raise them or lower them another half step and call them augmented or diminished. When you have firsts, fourths, fifths, and octaves, they're either perfect unison, augmented unison, or diminished unison, perfect fourth, augmented, diminished fourth, perfect fifth, augmented, or diminished fifth, perfect octave, augmented, or diminished. And then if you really want to nerd out, you can study this little chart here. And that's everything on intervals. This Saturday, next week, we're going to talk about sight reading. And we're going to look at a couple of very basic examples that you can use. You can learn a couple of things about how to find your home note, as I like to call it, your do. You have to find your do, or you have to find your la. You have to find either your major tonic or your minor tonic. And from there, you're able to read a lot easier because you're able to kind of figure out where everything is. So I hope you enjoyed that. And if you do want to go back and check some more of that stuff on intervals, you can always go to musictheory.net. Otherwise, just stick along for the ride, and we'll start reading through some parts next week. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.